I'm going to put you on mute.
Okay. You can put me on mute, no problem. Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. I apologize for the last minute pivot. Just need to be home for tonight. We'll be learning Maseches Sanhedrin Daf Vav, and we're starting 10 lines or so from the bottom of Daf Hamid Days. And we'll be going most of the way down till the third to last line on Vav Amid Beis. A lot of ground to cover. As you can see, even just flipping through, you'll see the next blot is huge. Daf Zion is very large. And then we have a couple of shorter ones coming up, but it's a pretty zaftige Masechta with some blot being bigger than others. Let us get started on the bottom of Hamid Bays, 10 lines from the bottom. Gufa. We have a statement that we learned already, one that we're going to analyze still more. Amar Shmuel, Bays Shadanu Dinehen Din Ela Shinikra Bezdin Chatzuf. If there are two people who tried to adjudicate a case, the halacha is that they are the minimum, and that works, except that they are referred to as a Bezdin Chatzuf, as a disrespectful Bezdin. It's really not the right way to do things, but what we're able to see from here is that the minimum is not three. The minimum seems at least to be two. Yasib Rav Nachman v'ka'amar laha shmaisa. Rav Nachman was sitting and quoting this din about a Bezdin Chatzuf, that two people are considered to be a Bezdin. Esvei Rava le Rav Nachman. He says, Afilu shnayim mezakin o shnayim mechayven ve'echad omer eni yodea yosifu hadayanim. This is a halacha. We're not going to go into detail now. We will go into detail in a few weeks on this Gemara, which is 3 weeks from tonight, a little bit more, where it says if two people are acquitting, or two people are saying guilty, and one person says, I don't know, the halacha there is Yosifu Hadayonim. We're not going to learn now why they would be adding. We'll learn that then. Now, but the Isa, if what Shmuel said is correct, that two people who adjudicate a case are enough, so then lehavu kishnayim shadanu. Then why in that Bryson Chavtes, when it says that two people who acquit, why would we say why would we say that the din is not a din in this case? We have two people who already said it. So the Gemara says, no, the case on Daf Chav Tes is different. Shiny Hassam, in the case of Daf Chav Tes, what was the setup of the case of Dayanim? So there, the setup of the case was that the Meikara Adaita de Tlasa Yasivi. When the Baalei Din went in, their expectation was that there should be three dayanim. But hacha, in the case of Shmuel, where Shmuel said that Shnaim Shadanu, that it is a din, it's just a bezdin chatzov, there, hacha lavadaita de they were only expecting two, they weren't expecting three, and therefore, in such a case, it's considered to be a proper din. So that is question number one and answer number one. And now here's question number two on Shmuel. Let's just do a chazara. Shmuel said, Shnaim Shadanu, if two people adjudicate a case, the halacha is that their din is binding, their psak is binding. Esve, we have a problem. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, Adin b'shlosho pshara b'shnayim. He says that when it comes to a regular court case, people coming to Bezdin and they're bringing a shaila to Bezdin, you need three people. Upshara, this is a little bit of a new concept. Upshara is a compromise that two Baalei didn't have. So let's say that you, Rob, and I were in a court case together, and we said, look, we could go to Bezdin. Let's be B'nai Torah. Let's just talk it out, hash it out. Okay, I say A, you say B. Let's come up with the middle of the road. Let's agree. That's called a pshara, where we agree on our own. So Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says that when it comes to a classical din, it's bishlosha. A classical court case requires three dayanim, but a pshara requires shnayim. And v'yafeh koach pshara mikoach hadin. It's actually more powerful. It's better, I should say. That's a better language. It's better that there should be a pshara than an actual court case. Sheshnayim shedanu, when two people try to adjudicate a case in Mamonis. Why did we say that a pshara is more powerful? Because in the case of a regular court case, but there's only two dayanim, so then the Baalei Din can say, I know that these two people, Ruvain and Shimon, were the dayanim, but we can be choser. We can say, I'd rather do a pshara and go against their din. But last line of the page, Ushnaim sha'asu pshara, but two people who make a pshara, a compromise. So let's say Rob and I decide we're not going to go to court. We're going to decide on our own what the right answer is, how to split the monies, even though we disagree. There, ein Baalei Din yachol lachzor b'hen. There, The halacha is that once Rab and I agree, we cannot go back. That is the final psak. So what we see from here is that two people who were done, this is 2 and 3 lines from the bottom of the page, two judges who adjudicate a case, the halacha is that you can be choser from them. That goes against Shmuel, because Shmuel said that two people who adjudicate a case, their din is a din, but it's a bezdin chatzov. It's a disrespectful bezdin. But this Bryce, in the name of Rashbag, says, no, it's not, because I can be choser on that. If Rab and I are the Balei Din, I can be choser in such a case. So says the Shita of the Gemara. So that's a kasha on Shmuel. The Gemara says on the top of Vavam at Aleph, as we start on the new Daf, "V'chitema pligi Rabbanan alei de Reb Shimon ben Gamliel." If you want to say, okay, but maybe Shmuel's relying on the Rabbanan on a different Shita, and the Rashbag has his own Shita, so really it's not a stira within Shmuel. It's just a different Shita. Shmuel doesn't hold to the Rashbag. So to this, the Gemara says that's not possible because Amar Rabbi Abo, Shnaim Shadanu Ledivrei Hakol Ein Dineim Din. Says the Gemara, no. Rabbi Abo, who by the way is an Amora, as we'll soon highlight, he holds that two people who adjudicate a court case, everyone agrees that Ein Dineim Din against Shmuel. So we see that you can't tell me it's a machlokes between the Rashbag and the Rabbanon. They should all agree because according to Rabbi Abo, it seems to be that Shnaim Shadanu Ein Dineim Din. The Gemara says, what are you talking about? You have two Amoraim who have diametrically opposed shitas. We have Shmuel from 10 lines from the bottom, the case we started with today, where he said, Shtaim Shadanu, if you have two people who are adjudicating a case, the halacha is that it's considered to be a din, but it's a bezdin chatzah. Rabbi Abo says, nobody holds it to a din. You're done. Down for the count. Gavra, agavra, karamis. 3 lines from the top of Avamid Aleph. You can't ask from Shmuel, from Rabbi Abo against Shmuel. They just have different shita. It's not a machlokas tanoim. It's a machlokas amoraim as to whether or not we say that 2 dayanim is sufficient. So that's what the Gemara says up until here. And here's the next gufa. We're going to now analyze this unique shita of Rabbi Abo that we just saw. 3 lines down on Vavam and Aleph. Gufa. Amar Rabbi Abo, Shnaim Shadam Dinei Mamanis. Two people who adjudicate a case in Mamanis. The Divrei Akol Ein Dineim Din. And what he's basically saying, two people don't count. What, therefore, do we need as a minimum? We need 3. This we saw as a machlokas tanaim earlier. Now, on this, the Gemara asks Akasha. Eisvei. Rabbi Abba, the Rabbi Abo. Rabbi Abba asks Rabbi Abo. Let's remember what Rabbi Abo said. Rabbi Abo said that you need 3. So let's say Dan es hadin v'zika es hachayev, a person, one man, he adjudicated a case and he said the halacha v'zika es hachayev, and he made a mistake. He acquitted the guilty, v'chiyev es hazakai, or he incarcerated the innocent, or timei es hator, he was mitame, something that was in fact pure, or tiher es hatame, masha asa asui u'mishalem ibeso. Fascinating din. Here we have a brisa, and this brisa can be found in a previous Masechta. We learned this already, and it will be found later on here. So the Gemara says that even one person works because Danas Hadin, the halacha is that he's even able to have one person. So how can you say that the person is going to be mishalem ibe? So how can you say that one person has a din at all? It says the Gemara, how can one person be a dayan? The Gemara responds, that we allow less than 3 edim. How is it that we are allowed to have just one? Says the Gemara, dekibluhu alayu. We allow a person, let's say Rab and I want to go to court together. We have a din Torah, but we agree not to go to a regular bezdin. We agree just to go to a Rav. I've seen this before in contracts among peers, that if we ever have an argument, we'll go to the Rav of our shul, we'll go to Rabbi Robinson, we'll go to Rabbi First, we'll go to Rabbi Reese. Whatever he says goes, and they contract between one another with that din. So the halacha is that works. That's binding. Halacha l'maisa, that's binding. And whatever the Rav paskins, even if he's the only one adjudicating, so the halacha is that the dayan is allowed to say that as long as it's the kiblinhu alai. We're a quarter of the way down on Vavam and Aleph. Yachi says the Gemara, Amai Mishalei Mibeso. If the Baalei Din agreed that Ruvain and Shimon should be that Ruvain should be the dayan, But he then makes a mistake. Why should he have to pay? The Bali Din already agreed that this person is the one who should be the posek acharon. So says the Gemara, the reason why he has to pay is the Amrulay Dayanta Dinas Lan Din Torah. I asked you to do a Din Torah. Take a look at a beautiful Rashi. Rashi 6 lines down. Dibra Maslo Din Torah. V'kevan Dita'a Lav Din Torah done. I asked you to paskin me a shaila, not to give me the wrong answer. If you give me the right answer, thank you very much. If you give me the wrong answer, you're chayiv to pay. I needed you to teach me halacha. I didn't go to you for amaratzis. I'm an amaretz. I don't need help with that. I asked you to teach me something. So you're going to paskin me a shaila for my machlokas that I have with Rav. So give me the right answer. You give me the wrong answer, that's your problem. You have to pay for that. Amar le Rav Safra le Rabbi Abba, the ta b'mai. What kind of mistake are we talking about where this person, excuse me, where this person is going to be chayiv? So Yilema de ta b'dvar Mishnah. If you want to say that this guy, the person who's trying to be a dayan by himself, was talking about a dvar Mishnah, he's talking about a case where the dayan said a Mishnah the wrong way, that's a zero in halacha. The Amar Rav Sheshes Amar Rav. Amar Rav Asi, should be Rav Asi. Ta b'dvar Mishnah chozer. If a person makes a mistake, they quote a Mishnah wrong, so then halacha is that they're chozer. The whole din is back to square zero. Nothing counts at all. So therefore, it can't be that the case where the dayan is going to be chayev, it can't be that we're talking about a case where he made a mistake in a Mishnah, because there, the whole case falls apart. Then the din that the dayan made is a zero. Ella, says the Gemara, a third of the way down. What's the mistake that he made? The Ta'abashikul Hadas. He made a mistake, not in what's obvious within a Mishnah, but in the Shikul Hadas. He had to make a cheshbon. What was the cheshbon that he made that was a mistake? So listen to this Gemara. Heichidami b'Shikul Hadas. What type of mistake are we talking about? Where the person who adjudicated a case all by his lonesome would be chayiv to pay for his error. So says the Gemara, Amar Papa could go tre Tanai utre Amoroi depligi ahadate. Maybe it's a case where we have two Tanoim or we have two Amoraim that are arguing with one another about a particular halacha. Do we turn left or we turn right? There is no clear-cut psak in halacha. The sugya and the alma, this sugya, according to the whole world, aliba dechad minayim. Even though there is no clear psak, everybody holds like Amora number one or like Tana number one. So Azal Ihu, and this Dayan who was adjudicating the case for me and Rab, this guy, he did ke'idach. He followed like the minority's opinion, which really isn't normal. Hainu shikul adas. So this is fascinating because the Gemara says that this is considered a toast. It's binding, but it's considered a toast. It's considered a mistake. And says the Gemara, Lema ketanoi. Perhaps this machlokes actually aligns like the following machlokes tanoim. What is the following machlokes tanoim? Says the Gemara, bitzua. And bitzua is actually, as you can see in Rashi, is a pshara. This is talking about a compromise. Remember the case that we were talking about earlier, that if the Balei Din would like to, instead of going into a proper Din Torah, they decide to go in the hall and talk, and they decide they're going to make a compromise. That's considered a bitzua or a pshara, a compromise. So the halacha is bishlosha divi Reb Meir. Reb Meir is of the opinion that you need 3 yidden for that. V'chachamim omrim, our Gemara says pshara, but really it should say bitzua, the same language as the Tanakama, as Reb Meir. V'chachamim omrim bitzua biyachid. He holds that bitzua can be even with one person. And savruha, the thinking about this machlokes between Reb Meir and the chachamim is the Kuli Alma Makshinan Pshar Ladin. Everybody has some level of connection. We connect the halacha of how many dayanim you need in a regular din Torah and how many dayanim you need in a case of pshara. My lab welcome. Perhaps Reb Meir and the Chachamim are arguing. Tamar savar din b'shlosha, mar savar din b'shnai. One says you need 3, and one says you don't need 3. You can even have 2. In fact, according to this shita, you can even have 1, but that's a sidebar. Says the Gemara lo, tekule alma din b'shlosha. Really, when we're talking about a case of a regular court case of din Torah, the halacha is that you need 3 people. What are Rav Meir and the Chachamim arguing about? Temar savar makshinan pshara ladin, umar savar lo makshinan pshara ladin. One says that we do compare pshara to din, and therefore we need 3. That's why Rav Meir says bitzua is 3. The Chachamim would say not that way. The Chachamim would say, Umar Savar, lo makshina pshar ladin. The Gemara says maybe we've misunderstood this all along, still in regards to how many people we need to judge a din Torah. We're 10 lines from the bottom on Vav Amud Aleph. Lema tzlasa tanoi bipshara. Maybe there's a three-way machlokes by tanoim. This can be picked up on by the first approach within Rav Meir and the Chachamim. Says the Gemara, Demar Sabar B'Shlosha. According to some, this would be Rav Meir. According to some, you need three dayanim when it comes even to pshara. Umar Sabar. According to the second shita, in our first understanding of Rav Meir, it's Bishnayim. Umar Savar, and the final shita holds B'Yachid, that even one person can do a pshara. Says the Gemara, and maybe not. Amar Ravacha Bereder Rav Ika, V'Tamer Rav Yemar Bar Shalamia. One of these two people said, Man de Amar Trei Afilu Chad Nami. There is no shita that actually holds that you need two Jews for a pshara. Either it's like Rav Meir that you need three, or it's like the Chachamim that you need one. But the shita that we veiled as a shita of shtaim is actually not really a shita. Hadika Amar Trey, why is it that the shita that said two, why did they bother saying two if in fact even one is sufficient? So says the Gemara, so that there are witnesses present. And the Gemara makes a gentle diuk from here, one that we would not have made on our own, 4 lines from the bottom. What we see from our Gemara by inference is that we don't need to make a kinyan when we're making a pshara. So, if Rab and I decide prior to our din Torah to make a pshara, we don't have to make a kinyan with one another. Once we agree, the story is over. If in fact this was only about kinyan, then the manda amar tzricha tzlasa, according to Rav Meir, who says that we need 3 Jews for pshara, lamali. If it's all about making a kinyan and edim, then that's all you need. Tiski betray v'leknemine. All we need is 2 people. Let them be the edim. They'll witness the kinyan and shalom Yisrael. Elamai, it must not be that way. So that's why the Gemara says that it doesn't make sense that we should need a kinyan. Even though that's true, the Gemara says, without giving us any background and any logic, the Gemara turns 180 degrees and says, really, we do hold that way. That if Rab and I decide that we're going to go to court, we should do a kinyan, go to make a pshara before it's in Torah, we should actually make a kinyan. What does that mean? So, instead of our din Torah, what's going to happen is Rab and I will discuss. I think Rab owes me $1,000. Rab thinks he owes me $500. We agree to split it down the middle. He's going to eat 250 and I'm going to eat 250. Once we agree, I'll say to Rab, take this pencil, it's mine. Do a kinyan, sudar kinyan chalip, and he lifts it up, and then it's binding. That seems to be how we paskin in halacha. This Gemara this does exist in Shas. This Gemara is unique because the presentation of the Gemara seemed to be the exact opposite. For example, the line right before seemed to say that Ein Tzricha Kinyan. That was Rav Ashi's diuk. And without any explanation, the Gemara turns a corner and says, that's not correct. Rav Ashi's wrong. And therefore, we do need a kinyan. Now, that is the psak in halacha. What's lacking for us here is the time to look into the Rishonim to see why we're breaking the logical flow of our Gemara to follow a categorical psak that doesn't seem to have a lot of roots. Tanu Rabbanan, the last line of Vav Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, "Kishem she'adin b'shlosha, kach bitzua b'shlosha." This is like the shita of Rav Meir that we saw earlier. That just like a regular din Torah requires 3 Jews, a bitzua, a pshara, a case of compromise, also requires that. Nigmar hadin. However, let's say that the court case began and the court case advanced to the point where it was nigmar hadin. Once the dayanim have a clear psak as to what the halacha is, again, my case, I say Rab owes me 1,000. Rab says he only owes me 500. We go to Bezdin at the CRC, Rabbi Reese, Rabbi Raka, whoever, they all decide the answer. It says the Gemara on the top of Vav Amud Beis, Iyata Rishai Liftzoa. You can't go back now. Once there is a din Torah, you can't go back now. And you can imagine the motivation. Let's say that the Bezdin sided with Rab. And they say, hey, you only owe 500. Be like, Rob, let's make a deal. What do you mean make a deal? They already paskin the Shiloh. There's no pshara after a din Torah is made. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara now interjects this brisa with an acronym to remind us of, to teach us a mnemonic, I should say, to remind us of all the names of the people that we're going to see in the Gemara upcoming. Sarmash, Bankash, Simon. Rabbi Lazar ben Noshel, Rabbi Yossi. The Samich of Sarmash is Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Omer, Aser Livtsoa. This is fascinating. We know there's the concept of pshara, and sometimes it happens to be the case that a person wants to make a pshara. Maybe Rob and I are good Jews. We don't want to fight. We want to come up with an answer. We don't want to go to a Bezdin. What's going to happen in Bezdin? They're going to paskin like one of us, me or him, and someone's going to be unhappy. Let's just agree out of the gates. Let's make it as okay. We disagree. Fine. Let's be big boys about it, and let's just see. Says the Gemara, Aser Livtzoa. You're not allowed to do that. Unbelievable. The Gemara completely turns and says any compromise that's made instead of a regular din Torah, that's an avera. Anyone who praises or blesses the person who makes a compromise, this person is a blasphemer. A person who blesses a botzea, a person who blesses a compromiser, that person is blaspheming Hashem. Ella. What is the right way for Rob and I to go to court? The halacha is the best way for Yidden to go to court is Ela Yikov Adin Sahar. Literally translated, we should bore a hole through the mountain. Namely, whatever the halacha is, the halacha is. If the psak is in favor of Rav, so be it. Yikov Adin Sahar might be hard for me. If the psak is like me, Yikov Adin Sahar is going to be hard for Rav. But Yikov Adin Sahar, that's the right way to do it. Shenemar ki hamishpat le'elokimu. The mishpat, the judgment belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And because the judgment belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then whatever the halacha is, it is no compromises. We don't try to find the middle ground. We do whatever is state and Shulchan Aruch. V'chein Moshe haya omer Yikov Adin Sahar. That's how Moshe would paskin shilas when he was in charge. Aval Aaron HaKohen, Aaron, who was a dayan in his own right, Oev Shalom v'rodef Shalom. We know that he loved peace and he pursued peace. Umeisim Shalom et Adam l'chaveiro, and he would always try to make every effort to extend beyond the normal limits to try and make peace between people. He'd go over to a guy like me and Rob. He'd say, guys, trust me. I'm Aaron HaKohen. Go work it out. Go work it out. So Moshe and Aaron didn't agree about Yikov Adin Sahar. Moshe was of the opinion that no matter what the din is, we're not emotional about it. If the halacha is X, then the halacha is X, whatever the fallout is. Aaron said, guys, please work this out. Shalom is more important. Shene'emar, Torah's emes hayasabefihu. The Torah of truth was in his mouth. Ve'avlo lo nimsa bisfasa. There were no averas found on his lips. B'shalom uv'mishor halach iti. He would always go with peace. That's how he would walk. Ve'rabim heshiv me'avon. And he returned a lot of people from an avera. So says the Gemara, that's how Aaron would work. So we have a machlokas, a fundamental machlokas, of whether or not we allow for pshara to avoid going into a full-blown Bezdin court case. Rebbe Lazar, as well as the shita that will follow, have a problem with the initial shita that we have of Rebbe Lazar ben Osho Rabbi Yossi. Rebbe Lazar ben Osho Rabbi Yossi says that it's usher to do a pshara, and he quoted the pasuk of Ubotzea berach noas Hashem. Says the Gemara, Omer haresha gazal sashel chitim. Let's say that I go into somebody's house and I steal a little bit of wheat. The tachna, and I grind it up. The afa, and I bake it into bread. And I'm a frum guy, even though I stole. I'm not so frum. But all of a sudden, I become a big tzaddik. I was mafresh chala. Ketzad mevarech. What bracha should he make? Says the Gemara. What do you mean? What bracha? Ein zeh mevarech ela menois. You don't steal something for hafrashas chala. You stole chala. You baked bread. You're going to be mafresh for chala before Hakadosh Baruch Hu, a chutzpah. You're not allowed to do that. You can't make that bracha. You're a blasphemer. So he clearly has a very different pasuk than Rabbi Yossi ben Glili. Rav Meir Omer lo nemar botzeh ela keneged Yehuda. Yehuda made a compromise that he should never have made this past week's parsha. Says the Gemara, shenemar vayomer Yehuda el echad ma betza kinaro gesachinu. What did Yehuda say? Don't kill him. Let's sell him to the Midyanim. Says the Gemara, what is that? Yehuda, you're in charge. Stop compromising. Do the emes and save your brother, save Yosef. The cholam avarech is Yehuda, anyone who praises Yehuda, harezem and that's blasphemy. He made a pshara that he should never have made. All of this is approach number one of variations on this pasuk, where we started with the shita of it is aser, it's a chote to be botzeya. And let's see the next shita. Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha Omer, and we're a third of the way down. Mitzvah liftzoa, unbelievable. So now we're seeing the other side of the coin. We saw the Moshe side with a little bit of Aaron. Now we're seeing the Aaron side fully. So there's a big machlokes between the Tanoim. Do we say Yikov adin sahar like Moshe? Whatever the halacha is, we check our feelings at the door. Even if the halacha is terribly difficult to swallow, it doesn't matter. Yikov adin sahar. That's Moshe. And Aaron says like this. Aaron says like Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha the mitzvah livtzoa. Shenemar emes umishpat shalom shafetu b'sha'arechem. There should be emes and there should be mishpat, but shalom shaftu b'sha'arechem. We should have peace. Now, if I win, Rob's going to be unhappy. That's not peace. It's emes, but it's not peace. If Rob wins, I'm not going to be happy. Again, it's emes, but it's not shalom. So this pasuk teaches us that there has to be shalom. So it says the Gemara, wait 1 second. V'alo b'makom sheyesh mishpat aim shalom. B'makom sheyesh shalom aim mishpat. One way or the other, it doesn't work. If there's going to be, says the Gemara, if there's going to be mishpat, if Rob is right, then that's not going to be shalom. I'm not going to feel good about it. And as well, b'makom sheyesh shalom aim mishpat. Wherever there is peace, then that means we agreed to a pshara. That's not going to work either. Ella, says the Gemara, Ezu mishpat sheyesh bo shalom. What type of adjudication will also yield shalom? Habe omer ze bitzua. That means we should do a compromise. The David HaMelech also agreed to this line of reasoning that we should do a compromise. David did the same thing. He says the Gemara halfway down, just opposite the Tosfos Aval Aharon. The Gemara says first words on the line. The pasuk that we just said by David speaks about mishpat ustaka. That's a pasuk from Shmuel Beis Perek Ches. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. How can David successfully have mishpat and staka? Mishpat is Yikov adin sahar, and staka is righteousness. So says the Gemara, Ella ze'ezehu mishpat sheyesh bo tzedakah ve'omer ze bitzua. So that's how we can try and understand this second world of trying to say the bitzua as a mitzvah, because the bitzua avoids machlokes. It's not Yikov adin sahar. Yikov adin sahar leaves people not b'shalom. It's emes, but it's not b'shalom. So this is the compromise. Compromising to make a pshara, according to this approach in the Gemara, is worthy. It says the Gemara, son the Tanakama, this case of David needs to be presented to the Tanakama, because the Tanakama at the top of the page said that what are you going to do about the psukim by David? So it says the Gemara, Danis Hadin, if a person does adjudicate a case on his own, Zikra Sazakai, and he gave the right psak, V'chayev Esachayev, he acquitted the one who deserved acquittal, and he was Mechayev, the one who deserved a guilty verdict. V'rosh and Ischayev Onim B'mamo. And then he saw that with the psak of Yikov Adin Sahar, that somebody lost their money and now they're poor. So the halacha is V'shilem lo mitoch beso. Here we can fulfill Yikov Adin Sahar. Rab and I are in a case scenario. We have a big machlokas. Aaron HaKohen says, Chevra, please work it out on your own. So what happens is they paskin in favor of Rab, and I lose a lot of money. But now I'm below the poverty line, and now I'm poor. So how does David live in both worlds? David says, Yikov adin sahar, that's going to be the mishpat. The halacha is that Rab is correct. But now that I'm poor, what is the mishpat? What is the tzedakah? Is that we have to give charity to the poor person. Zeh mishpat tzedakah. Mishpat lazeh tzedakah lazeh. Mishpat lazeh shechzer lo mamo. Rab got what was deserved to him. Yikov adin sahar. It's not emotional. It's just a psak halacha. That's just how it is. Tzedakah lazeh. And how would David explain? Sheshilem lo mitoch beso. That's how the Tanakama would have to explain, because the Tanakama holds Yikov adin sahar. The halacha always has to be executed according to the final psak of Shulchan Aruch Shach and Taz. There is no flexibility on that. We can always be nice to the litigant, to the person who lost, to the defendant. You always be kind to him. I'm so sorry you lost. We're going to give you tzedakah to get you back on your feet. But Yikov Adin is Sahar. The psak has to be the psak that it has to be. Says the Gemara, skipping the parentheses, two-thirds of the way down, three lines before the middle width lines. Kasha le Rebbe. Rebbe doesn't understand this approach. After all, if what David HaMelech was doing was giving money to poor people after an adjudication where the person lost their finances, Hai l'chol amo, la'ani mi boile. Says the Gemara that the pasuk shouldn't say l'chol amo because according to the rationale that David would only give to poor people, didn't say poor people. It said l'chol amo. It says the Gemara Ella Rebbe Omer, or according to some, it doesn't say Rebbe at all. Ella afal pisha lo shine mitoch beso. Even if it's true that we just do Yikov Adin Sahar and David HaMelech doesn't pay the poor person, it doesn't matter. Why not? Look at this last short line. Zeu mishpat tzedakah. I'll show you how we can have mishpat, which is Yikov Adin Sahar. We bore a hole through the mountain. We are not emotional. We follow the academics of halacha. Whatever the psak in halacha is, it is. But what's the mishpat? So says the Gemara, Zeu mishpat tzedakah. Mishpat lo zeu tzedakah lazeh. There was mishpat, that's Yikov Adin Sahar for one person. Utzedakah lazeh, there was goodness that happened to the other. How does this play out? So says the Gemara, Mishpat lozeh shehechzer lo mamono. Rob got his money back. Yikov Adin Sahar, the psak is in his favor. Utzedakah lazeh, what's the tzedakah for me? It's a huge tzedakah. That is, shehotzi gzela mitachas yado. So that I, who inappropriately would have had money without the halach of Yikov Adin Sahar, so now I don't have to worry about my olam haba because I don't have the money in my property that didn't belong to me. Reb Shimon ben Menashe Omer, Shnaim shabo lefanecha ledin. If there were two people that came in front of you for a case, Ad shelo tishma divrehen. If I have yet to hear the two of you come ask me a shaila, oh misha tishma divrehem, or I did hear, but the iata yodeh lechan din noteh, but I as the dayan still don't know how I'm going to paskin. Atarishai lomar lahen tseu uvitzu. I can still tell you, guys. I heard you. I don't know what the psak is. I don't have an atiyah yet. You guys go outside and figure this out. However, mishatishma divrein, once I heard it and I know what's going on, if you bring the shaila to me and I do know how I'm going to paskin, so then the halacha is lomar sorry, lost my lomar lahen se'u uvitzu. Then once I know how I'm paskening, I can't do that. I know the halacha now. I know Rob's right. I'm the dayan. I know Rob's right. So then I can't say, guys, go make up sharp. Shenemar poter mayim reshis midon velifne hiskalea heriv netosh. How is this pasuk understood? Says the Gemara, last to the middle with line. Kodem shenis galea hariv. Before we reveal what the fight was about, obviously a play on words. Nisgalea with an ayin doesn't mean reveal. Nisgala with a hey does. A little shtickle play on words. Before the Riv, the battle is articulated in Bezin and the Dayan knows what's going on. Atayachal, the nacho. The Dayan can recuse himself. But Mishinis Galea Hari. But once it's clear as to how I'm going to paskin as a Dayan, Atayachal lenacho. That's not allowed. This says Veresh Lakish, but it's impossible. We're talking about a Tosefta, a Brisa. So therefore, there's a machlokas, as you can see on the side, that in the Tosefta it says Rabbi Yoshua ben Lakish, new name, or possibly Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish, machlokas between the Tosefta and the Rishonim here. Anyways, this will do Rabbi Yoshua ben Lakish. We don't know historically which one it was. Omar, he says, Shnaim shabo ledin, echad rach ve'echad kosher. We can all picture this. Din Torah, you know that one of the Baalei Din is a very kind and soft person, gentle spirit. The other one is a bull in a china shop. It says the Gemara, Ad shelo tishma divrei, and they walked into Bezdin together. You're sitting there as a die, and you're like, the guy number one is really Zeus. Guy number two is an extremely difficult, rigid, difficult person. So Ad shelo tishma divrei, if you never heard their psak, their case, as long as you don't know what the psak is, I recuse myself from this case. Because of what concern? because it's possible that the guy who's a very difficult person will end up being chayiv. And if he's chayiv, he's going to pester me for months. And I just don't need that headache. So as long as I don't know which direction the din is noten, I'm a dayan, I can recuse myself. No problem at all. However, mishetishma divran ba'ata yodea lehechan hadin noten. If I'm a dayan and I listen to the case, one guy's a nice guy, but one guy is just tough as nails. But now I know what the psak is. At that point, you cannot say, I recuse myself. Shenemar lo saguru mipnei ish. You should not be afraid. 8, 9, 10 lines from the bottom, the Gemara says these are the longer lines here. Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha Omer, Minayin l'talmid sheyoshev lifnei rabo. Let's say a student is sitting in front of his Rebbe, v'raz chus la'ani v'chova la'ashir, and he sees something meritorious that goes in favor of the poor person, but it's a chova la'ashir. It's a detrimental halachic svara that could really incriminate the wealthy person, which is not good because the wealthy person could make waves for the dayanim. Minayin shelo yishtok. How do you know that even the Talmud, even lifnei rabo, how do you know that the Talmud should speak up? Shenemar lo sagura mipnei ish, as the pasuk says, you should not be afraid of anybody. Amar Rav Chanan, similarly, lo tachnis tevarecha mipnei ish. The word tachnis here is a very unique word. Normally it means to enter, but here it really means to withhold. So says the Gemara, how do we know that we should be lo tachnis, don't hold back something? V'yehu edim, yodim, period. Amar Omer, he says, lo tachnis tevarecha mipnei ish. You should not hold back anything in front of a person. The Edim, when we're talking about Edim, the Edim should know the following. Yodines mi hein me'idin. They should know who they're testifying for, which is really HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'lifnei hen me'idin. And in front of who they are Edim, which is in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Umi asid li para mehen. And who's going to be the one to pay the bill at the end of the day? Shenemar v'amdu shnei amnashim asher lehem hariv lifnei Hashem. The Edim have to know. When the Edim come in and they're doing an Edus, they're doing so lifnei Hashem. You have to know what's going on. You can't mess around. If you're an Eid, you have to know you're standing before Hashem. And similarly, they have to know in front of whom they stand. That Elohim, the judges in this case, they stand before the Aleph Lamed for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'chein v'yoshav adu omer v'yomer el hashoftim ru matem osim ki lo la'adam tishpetu ki im la'Hashem. Beautiful. Says the Gemara that the Dayanim also have to know that they're standing in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Dayanim are doing holy work. They're doing God's work. The Eidim are also doing God's work. You have to know who you're standing in front of. Maybe that will create an anxiety, a pressure for you to not do what you really should do. So says the Gemara, and this is going to be the last couple of lines we're going to learn today. We're 4 lines from the bottom on Vav Amud Beis. Shema Yomar Hadayon Mali Betzarazeh. Forget it. I don't want to be a dayan. I don't want the pressure. I'm a Talmud Chacham. I know every shach and every taz. Leave me out. Too much pressure. I'm standing. It's too much pressure. So Zag the Gemara, Talmud Lomar imachem bedavar mishpat. That don't worry. Hashem is with you with your judgment. And says the Gemara, Ein lo ledayan ela ma she'ein avros. A dayan can only factor in his psak based on what is lifnei ein ein l'dayan alamasha ein avros. What this means is as follows: if you, like in geometry, when we were in high school, you had the section of a question that were the givens. Yeah, the angle of ABC is equal to DEF. We had the givens. Whatever the cases that were presented by the Baalei Adin to the dayan, those are your givens. Ein l'dayan alamasha ein avros. Whatever your eye sees is what you get. If you paskin a shiloh with the ingredients that the Baalei Adin poured out in front of you on the table, the Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to be with you. You don't have to worry about that. Even if you make a mistake, Hashem is going to be with you. You can't break the rules. Pasha, you can't break the rules. But you should not be concerned as a dayan. Don't let fear grip you. At the end of the day, in the dayan alamasha and a rose, you will not be held accountable in a negative way. If you paskin a shiloh to the best of your ability, to the best of your knowledge, you did your research, you wrote everything up, you got it clear. So you should not be afraid before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ein l'dayan alamasha ein avros. We're going to stop right here for tonight. 3 lines from the bottom on Vavim at Beis by Hechidami. Im Yirtzeh Hashem will pick up again tomorrow in person. Wishing you all a beautiful night.